And now for something completely machinima.
Tracy Harwood. So I've done a little bit of digging around and I've discovered.
Ricky Grove. Fog comes in on little cat feet.
Phil Rice. This is the best film that I've seen all year and maybe ever.
Damien Valentine. Use the Machinima, Luke.
Hello, and welcome to another installment of And Now for Something Completely Machinima. This week we'll be covering the news, and I'm joined by my co-host Tracy Harwood, who has returned from her trip to the moon. No, it was Mars, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You were the first woman on Mars.
Something like that.
Well, I hope
Great to be back, though.
Yeah, I hope you had a great trip. And
Did indeed.
Yeah,
and I used this strange portal, can you tell?
Yeah. Well, we did miss you during the film reviews. We kind of had to struggle to share what we could find out about those films.
That's very kind. Yeah, it looked like you had some great films to review. I was very disappointed not to be there to talk about them.
Yeah, but next month you can get your verdict back on the next section. So
look forward to it.
Right, so when we record this, it's beginning of February, and we've collected news over the course of January. And I was thinking it's going to be really hard because January is usually a very quiet time. And, you know, covering from the holidays, not much happens. We're going to really struggle to find anything worth talking about. And I'm looking at all the news we've got posted, and I think I've got more news stories to cover than I've ever had before. And of course, you've got plenty to talk about as well. So I was very wrong when I thought that.
It's been a busy month, hasn't it? January has been a massively busy month. And there's such a lot going on that's so relevant to the community at the moment, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, I will let you get started with your news, and then I'll do mine after. So
sure. Well, okay. So last week, as we record, end of January, I saw the a really, one of those great sort of film festivals putting a call out for contributions. And this is a competition that I think machinimators should get involved with, particularly if they are using generative AI tools at all. This is RunwayML's third annual AI Film Festival, which is now open to submissions right up until the end of March. And it's free. It's free to submit. It will take place this year in New York and LA and is presented by Tribeca Festival, IMAX, the Gotham, Dot Monks, NVIDIA, Goldman Sachs, and also the American Cinema Editors. Films must be between sort of 1 and 10 minutes long, but are actually category agnostic. They select 10 finalists, and these films will be showcased in a gala series of gala events in New York and LA, and there are $60,000 worth of awards. Now, I think it's really worth having a look at some of the previous winners, just to get an idea of the sort of thing that it's been created with this. I think all year, last year, I was talking about last year's winner. It's an absolutely incredible story and beautifully told with these generative tools, which I will put a link to so that you can have a look and see what you think about it. But I definitely encourage folks to submit to this. It's one of those sort of competitions that I think will just grow and grow. So yeah, that's the contest. And then in other news, and again, with Philip Rosedale back at the helm, it's not really surprising to see these things starting to take shape a bit more. But Second Life has been testing browser-based streaming, which I think can only really enhance our experience by basically increasing the frame rate. And we've long commented on the glitchiness of the animations in Machinimas, which I think really has hindered the kind of work that we might expect to see these days, because the quality of the renders are just not really standing up to other forms of animation that we're seeing out of other game engines, frankly. and I suppose really it would be fair to say that it doesn't really seem to have held the community back, just perhaps people like ourselves looking for high quality examples to discuss on this show. So it's quite good to see that that investment is now sort of coming through in different ways of capturing the content. And then, of course, another aspect that I was particularly interested to note is a report over the last month that Linden Labs has spent something like $1.3 billion building the world and paid back to its creators 1.1 billion. I mean, that's an astonishing achievement, and to think that the creators have benefited from that, that investment and that community is just so it's a really heartwarming thing to sort of discover, I think. So, rock on, Second Life.
Yeah, I was thinking when I saw those numbers, I thought, I don't know how many creators there are in Second Life these days, but I can't imagine there's millions. There must be thousands.
Yeah.
So that if you start splitting it up, all those creators getting a quite sizable chunk of cash there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was long the case that the first sort of millionaire was created out of a virtual game long ago. So I can well imagine that there are, probably, very small minority that make a living out of it. But with with that kind of level of investment, you would expect that it would attract a lot of potential users, even just taking a little bit out of it. But yeah, it's really, I really think that's a good story. I like to see that. Yeah. I'm not so sure it's true in other virtual environments that we're looking at these days, but yeah, pretty impressed with that one. I also found a great video library that you might want to check out. It's free to use, but you do need to create an account. And it's an animator's survival kit, which is part of a Bloomsbury video series. It's been created by a guy called Richard Williams. There are many videos on different animation techniques in that series. And for those of you that don't know, Richard is actually a 3 times winner of an Academy Award for his animation, and probably best known for his direction of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So it's definitely recommended to check out that video series. And then moving on to some projects, I saw some fascinating shorts which illustrate how Industrial Light and Magic created the VFX in the Gladiator II movie. It has all the hallmarks, I think, from everything that we've seen in Unreal Engine. Whether that is what's been used or not, I don't really know. And probably you'd need to spend a lot of time and energy in creating it. But it's a cracking video to watch. It's actually only 4 minutes long, given how much interest there is in Gladiator sequels. I'm quite surprised it's not quite a bit longer, but there you go. It's worth watching and catching up with.
I watched that. I haven't seen Gladiator 2 myself.
Oh, it's great.
I watched the trailer. I was also watching House of the Dragon at the same time. And I thought, this is kind of so similar to what I've watched. I don't really have the interest in watching Gladiator 2 on the big screen. I will get to it at some point.
Yeah.
But I did notice when I watched the behind the scenes, it looks stunning, the effects work they did. But Industrial Light and Magic have similar videos for a number of other films that were released last year as well. So there's one for which I'm sure you're dying to see, Alien Romulus.
Oh.
So that's a film I have seen. So it's interesting to see how they put that together and blended the practical model effects with the CGI to,
yeah.
And it's not all creature effects. Some of it's just the spaceships and those kind of effects as well.
Oh, okay. Maybe I can tolerate it then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, yeah, it's a good film. I wasn't too sure if I would enjoy it so much, and it's a bit of a riff on Ridley Scott's other films as well as Gladiator. But also, I don't know if you remember all those sword and sandal films from the 60s, the Ben-Hur and Spartacus and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
There's touches of that in it as well. So it's if you love all that kind of stuff, I'm sure you'll love Gladiator too. It's just different enough as well to have something something additional over and above the Russell Crowe version. Although, of course, it's nothing like the Russell Crowe version.
Okay.
in terms of, the acting quality, I think, really. Anyway, definitely check it out. And then another live action I found was a Half-Life indie film, real life film called The Freeman Chronicles, and it's made by a guy called Ian James Duncan. And it turns out that he and his crew have been working on it for several years. And in the description, he says he's made it hoping that someday it would be turned into a full-length video game series like The Last of Us. But you know what? I think actually there are thousands of machinimas that have been created in Half-Life. And these are really the lost series spread out over hundreds of channels, all bound together really by the love of the game's central characters. And it kind of made me question, is there actually any need for a real life series in the vein of Last of Us? I don't really think so. A film, yes, but not a series. So this is certainly one to check out if you're a Half-Life fan, and if not, just follow the machinima that riff on it. It's worth watching. It's really quite good actually as well. And then there's also alongside it, there's a really good website that they've linked to, which documents how the film was made. So I'd recommend having a look at that as well, because it just illustrates the way in which they put that project together. And then I found some other projects which made me think of all of you guys. I found a fantastic Tom Cook original fan song made in Elite Dangerous called "Mining on My Own." It's by Ghost Giraffe. It's brilliant. It's really well made song, and that made me think of Phil, of course. And then for you, Damien, I found a Mandalorian cinematic trailer made in Unreal, made by a guy called Jeffrey Granscene. And it's basically a showcase of his work as well as a fan film, but it's really good. It's worth checking it out. And then for Ricky, I found a Godot engine project. It's just basically a walkthrough in an environment that's been created in 4.3 version of the engine, but it's really quite stunning detail. It's been created by a guy called Jan Fiddler. And I actually really can't wait to see what this creator does with that in due course. And then I want to wrap up my updates for this month with a few thoughts about the latest AI developments. And this literally was out at the end of January, as we sit here, sort of first week of February. I have to say, I've been quite intrigued by the US Copyright Office's ruling on AI art generated with text prompts, which I guess many of you have also been following. It's something we've been talking about on this show for some time, and I dare say we'll be talking about it for some time yet to come. So what they ruled was that art of any form cannot be copyrighted from a text prompt, even if there have been multiple iterations of work before an artist is satisfied with the final work. And that decision has apparently been reached through extensive engagement with what they say is over 10,000 comments representing opinions from hundreds of different types of creator, as well as tech companies and other interested parties. Now, I am actually waiting to see more detailed analysis on the findings. But in the meantime, I've been reflecting on what I think are going to be some unintended consequences from the decision, bearing in mind that the bulk of output from the various generative AI tools is basically stock images used in all sorts of low-cost promotionals and business slideshows that don't really merit the expense of creating original works. And you'll probably ask, well, what's the evidence for this? And surely it's all about the artist, because that's what that ruling is primarily stating that it's all about. Well, I would ask how many more are now describing themselves as artists than before these tools were available. There are now thousands, if not millions of folks using these tools. And I would say they are not artists, but users of creative work. Some are indeed indie creators, and we talk about this a little bit in, the various films that we review that include elements of generative AI. And those indie creators are using the tools in a pipeline they are scrabbling to put together, really. But many are using these tools in whatever production pipeline they have for their work and their daily lives in sectors that are not typically described as creative industries. So copyright-free output means any ability to earn a short buck from published work is going to shift, I think, in emphasis from the potential for sale of output to specific cost for input. Now, the intent was that this decision emphasizes the human element of creativity, placing it in terms of authorship skills, but that's likely to result in accessibility challenges, I think, where AI as a service is available only to those who can afford it, where the platforms are going to be placing higher premium on the ability to author good prompts, perhaps by restricting word count or number of actions or some other means. And if that's the case, ultimately, it will be the indie creator that is going to pay the cost of the processing and use of tools to earn their stripes as a de facto creator. Never that was the case, but now there is a clear pathway, I think, for that to be emphasized within the business models of the various tech companies. Now, we've commented before on how these tools use content of creators, and that the real issue isn't so much about the output, but how the content used should be compensated for its inclusion in the outputs. Once again, in the reports, the tech devs claim that ascribing an allocation for how a work is used in an output is not possible. Excuse me. But it is this area that they should be made to consider. Of course, it's possible. It's just that its net effect in action will be to turn those companies, those tech companies, into banks, processing millions of small transactions to creators. But isn't that what the likes of Getty and Shutterstock already do? Let me also just comment on the artist perspective. One of the key points when the ruling is to do with how one of the key points, rather, is to do with how how it is the output is distinguishable in terms of AI assistance in creating the work from AI generated or created work. And this is fundamentally about the pipeline that an artist uses to make a decision on which version of output he or she prefers. And over the years of running the Art AI Festival here in the UK, which I've been directing, it's been very evident that the output selected is an aesthetic choice and the preference of an artist, but without the generative process of the machine they've used, which they've often acknowledged is well beyond their human ability to create. The work is simply not possible at all. The AI is quite simply not an assistant. But of the world's, just for example, some of the world's leading digital artists refer to AI not as an assistant, but as a co-creator. So I think really the debate has been hijacked in some way, and possibly in favour of the corporate benefit over the creative class, who are often at the base of the triangle of beneficiaries. Maybe that's just me being cynical, of course. I'm not the only one asking questions about the implications of this ruling, but I am very much looking forward to seeing more critical analysis of what this means in terms of the creative practice that we're already seeing emerge with the use of these tools. For example, the likes of the RunwayML film festival that I talked about right at the top of the show being backed by some of the biggest names in film festivals and production today. So it will be interesting to see how this one evolves. And I think super ironically, earlier last month, at the beginning of January, you may have seen an announcement of a merger between Getty and Shutterstock, whose rationale is partly so they can maximize investment in and return from what they describe as customer-facing technologies such as generative AI in a wider range of formats, including, but not limited to, images, music, 3D content, and what they describe as other types of asset, whatever they might be. Whilst it's been at the forefront on restricting uploads of content made with generative AI tools, I would say these guys have certainly not been slow in benefiting from licensing artist and creator content to the language model developers. And I'd suggest it's well positioned, therefore, to continue to benefit from the copyright ruling, albeit somewhat less clear how royalties from content use in outputs will be paid back to contributors, which I think is the key gap here. Maybe it's a one-shot process in the licensing. That's probably what I would expect. That's the sort of thing that I talked about when I was discussing how happy Ben and I would be for the use of our book, for example. But we're not necessarily talking about text here. We're talking about image primarily, or creative content. But I think what's going on at the moment actually really does fail the creators, and it's the pipeline that is most needed and actually quite feasible with the development and further advancement of AI. I'd be really happy to hear what other folks have got to say about that. I don't know if you've got any immediate observations, Damien.
No, because I haven't been following it closely enough to really have anything to say about it. But I'll say it now because it usually goes at the end. But if you do have any comments about this AI story, please send them into talk@completemachinima.com, and we can talk about them next month when we record again. I'll say that again at the end of the episode, but it'd be interesting to get some feedback on that.
Yeah, well, that's it for me this month. That's all I kind of picked up on.
Okay, well, I'll get started on my long stream of stuff as well. So the first thing that came up as the NVIDIA have announced the 50 series of RTX graphics cards. They were revealed at the CES Consumer Electronics Show back at the beginning of January. The 5090 and 5080s have already been released in the time between that and recording. I believe the 5090s sold out instantly. In the UK, the stock levels were in single digits for some of the retailers, so I'm not surprised they disappeared very quickly. The 5070s are going to be released sometime in February. By the time you listen to this, they may already come out. I don't have a date yet. I did have a look. They don't seem to have announced anything. I think it's just a case of you find out the day before that they're going to be available. So if you're interested in a new graphics card, then you might want to keep an eye on those. They do seem to have a very significant leap over the previous generation. I believe the 5070 is equal in terms of power to the 5090, the 4090 from the last generation.
Wow.
But without obviously the huge price tag that goes with the 90s. But yeah, we'll have to see how those turn out because obviously they're not available at the time of recording. But I'm quite interested to see what happens there. And it's
Yeah.
especially useful for Machinima for for the graphics rendering. And if you're using NVIDIA Omnibus, that's going to be something that's quite important because you can't use Omnibus without an RTX graphics card. So
Mm.
the next thing was also another New Year's related thing. It's kind of a tease about the future of the Half-Life games. The voice actor who played G-Man released a video ringing in the new year, but he didn't know what cryptic way that might suggest that he's been doing some new recordings for Half-Life. But obviously, he can't really talk about it beyond that, so who knows what that's going to be. But obviously, Half-Life is an important game for the Machinima community, so if there is a new installment of some kind, I think that'll be worth keeping an eye out. But again, at the time of recording, that's all we've got to go on. It could be that he just knows that people are eager for Half-Life 3 and he's teasing them. So
Yeah, probably.
he does seem to have that kind of sense of humor from the things I've seen him do.
Mm.
The next one is a video game. It's called Hollywood Animal, and it seems to be a sort of spiritual successor to the movies video game, but not the movie making side of it. This is only focused entirely on the business side of the game. But it so you can't make machinima movies with it. But I thought it was worth reporting because I did enjoy the management side of the movies as well. I played through the campaign all the way through. Only the once, but I had fun with it. And this, I watched the trailer and it looks like it's got a really dark sense of humor. Like if you like black humor, this is one for you because you can do all kinds of nasty things to your competitors, like get their actors beaten up and stuff like
Hmm.
that.
Mm.
The preview said that they had an actor from a rival studio beaten up, and then the rival studio, in retaliation, had hitmen sent out to kill the players' actors. So they've got a really twisted sense of humor with this, and you can go to some really dark places, but in a way that um, it's not meant to be serious. So who knows? Anyway, it looked like it'd be fun. I don't think it's out yet. Let me have a quick look. Uh, I think it's out soon. April, yeah, 10th of April.
Oh,
It will be released in early access on Steam. Um, so yeah, not a Machinima at all, but if you want to play managing your own Hollywood studio, that could be fun.
debauchery and dark deeds. Mm.
Yeah. You have to satisfy some of the dark impulses that your stars have, um, which I won't go into. You have to do your research and have a look at that. Back in January, there was the TMU tribute show to Ken White, who sadly passed away several years ago. I did go on the show and talked a little bit about my work and um, my memories of being on the various TMU shows and Ken.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, at the time of recording, they don't seem to have made it available to listen to. It was broadcast live, but I don't know if it was recorded or if it's going to be shared again. I hope it is shared again for those who missed it because it was a fun show to listen to, and it was nice to see so many people from the TMU community get back together and talk about their experiences of that community because that was a big part of
Yeah,
the
it
machinima
was.
world.
Mm.
So hopefully we'll get to see that again. Astartes, which is a Warhammer machinima we discussed a while back. None of us have a clue about Warhammer, but we were very impressed by the film.
Yeah.
Um, it when we discussed it, it was not a recent film. I can't remember exactly when it was released, but it was it's 7 or 8 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the creator disappeared, and then we found out that he'd actually been hired by Games Workshop to produce content. And one of those things was the Warhammer episode for Secret Level, which was released back in December. I did watch that. Is very impressively animated. A huge leap over Astartes in terms of visual quality and the software they must have given him to work on it. But yeah, that was a very impressive thing. And then about a week or so ago, he released the teaser trailer for Astartes 2, which has the same visual style as the Secret Level episode. So it's got that quality to it. But this is a sequel to his original film. It's being released officially by Games Workshop. So it's not a fan film, but it's an actual official production that's going to tell the story in the Warhammer world, which I still don't know that much about. But I thought it's worth mentioning because it's nice to see a machinima creator that we covered, even though we've discovered his film long after he made it, to see where he's ended up,
Yeah.
making a fan film, which has now resulted in him producing official content for that world he obviously loves. And I
Yeah.
look forward to seeing
Brilliant.
the film. Almost there. The Sims 1 and 2. A friend of mine got very excited posting this on Facebook. So I saw the video and then just read up. The Sims 1 and 2 have been re-released on Steam as part of the 25th anniversary of the game series, which is hard to believe. I still remember playing the first game and building this really elaborate house, spent my entire starting budget on it, moved the family in, and then realized I'd forgotten to put a toilet in. And I had no money to put one in, so they had a very miserable few days until they could afford to get one.
Oh
But
dear.
anyway, both games have been released separately. The packs have got all the expansions for The Sims 1 and 2. I think the 2 might be missing the IKEA pack, which is some extra furniture. I think that's because of some rights issue or something. But you get everything else. Like you're not missing out on a huge amount of content by not having that IKEA pack. Um, Now, obviously, The Sims 2 was another big part of the machinima community. A lot of people make The Sims machinima. Probably not so much with the first game, but I do know that Sims 2 was very popular.
Mm.
So if you're feeling nostalgic for those old Sims 2 days, this is a good chance to snap it up, because that content packet, it's got all of the expansion and everything. So that's a lot of content to work with. Um, so that's nice to see. And
And
the other thing is they have been modified to work on modern computers. Because my understanding is uh, they're not necessarily the most stable on Windows 10 and 11. So that's the only change that EA have made. They haven't enhanced the visuals or done anything else like that. It's just the original games modified to work on modern systems with all the expansion packs included. I have to buy them separately, but they're still a bargain, I think, if you want to get those games.
yeah, and it's also worth remembering that Todd Stallcamp, who was a machinima creator in Sims 2, is and has since those early days been the creative director for Sims. So there's a direct machinima link there to to community development really as well, which is great.
Yeah. And because this year is the 25th anniversary,
Mm,
imagine
mm.
The Sims 4, which is the most recent installment, is going to be getting a lot of new content as well. So
Yes, I've
that
no
could be
doubt.
useful as
Mm.
well for,
I can't wait to see what Phil does with it.
yeah. All right, the final piece of news, which came as a surprise, Rooster Teeth is back. Um, so we know that Rooster Teeth was bought out by Warner Brothers. I'm not exactly sure when they got acquired, but they produced lots of content, and then Warner Brothers shut them down last year, which um, I can't say I'm a huge Rooster Teeth fan. I did enjoy Red versus Blue for a while, but they are still a big part of the machinima community, so it was sad to
Mm.
see Warner Brothers shut them down. Well, Bernie Burns has reacquired the rights for Rooster Teeth, which he announced a few days ago. It's unclear what he's actually going to do with it. Obviously, I imagine he's going to produce more content with the Rooster Teeth name, but he's got it back, and so we'll have to wait and see what he does with it.
Mm.
Um,
Rock on, Bernie.
yeah, so nice to see he's got the name back, which is something he created or co-created, and look forward to seeing what you do with it, Bernie. So
Mm.
good luck.
Brilliant.
Well, that's all
Well,
my
let's.
news.
Yeah, no, great. I mean, gosh, what a lot. What a busy January.
Yeah, you know, I have to live up to it next month now.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one, really, I think. Listen, there's one more thing that we haven't talked about, and I'd really like to hear where you're going with it. But you've just finished Heir to the Empire after how many years?
Uh, More than I really want to think about.
Well, come on, spit it out.
All right, so 2019, I released the first chapter, and I think I've told this story before. I just finished a project, and I wanted to do something short, which is a joke. Um, I wanted to do something short, had a space battle in it, just to test out and practice my skills at animating space battles, because I wasn't really happy with what I'd done previously, and I thought, what can I do? So I was looking around the room, and my eye settled on a bookshelf, and there was Heir to the Empire sitting there. And I thought, I remember the first chapter. There's a space battle in it, and only three speaking characters. No, four speaking characters. So I don't have to find a huge cast of voice actors. I can focus on just doing the space battle.
I
So I did
see.
it, and when it was finished, I thought, okay, that was fun. I'm going to put it up on YouTube, and I hope some people enjoy it. Not expecting the reaction that it did get, which was it kind of became viral with Star Wars fans, and I had so many requests for more, which is not something I'd actually set out to do. I was already planning my next original project, and I was writing it, collecting voices for it, and stuff like that. And I thought, no, I don't really want to do 32 chapters of a book. Um, but then the request kept coming in. I thought, okay, I started thinking about, well, could I do it? Well, the first thing to do is, can I make the characters look like the ones from the films? Because, that's important that Han, Luke, and Leia look like themselves. And then you got characters like Chewbacca and C-3PO, which you can't create those in iClone's character creator because they have very specific looks that you need proper rendering software. So I found some character models for them that I could import into iClone and give them the same skeleton so they could move the same way. Then of course they have to sound right as well. Um, all the speaking characters, like Han Solo, has to sound like Harrison Ford. Luke Skywalker has to sound like Mark Hamill. Leia has to sound like Carrie Fisher, and so on. So I had to find people that could do their voices. I luckily I found this guy. His name's Matt Finish, and he did all the male character voices for movies. He had this video on his channel where he does impersonations, and he just did all the Star Wars stuff. Oh, that's the guy I'm going to ask. So I sent him an email and showed him the first chapter and said, "Oh, this is what's happening. I'm trying to do the next 4 chapters, thinking, yeah, people will get bored after that because they'll lose interest." And he said, "Yeah, I'd be up for it." So I sent him the script, and he started sending me the recordings back, and I was really blown away listening to what he did because this is one of my favorite books when I was a kid. So hearing the lines spoken by someone who sounded like the actual original characters, um, it made it very moving in a way that if you're a big fan of the book, you get it.
Yeah.
Or it's and so yeah, we did it, and I thought, okay, chapter 4. I wrote the script up to chapter 4, thinking that people will get bored after this because 1 had the battle in it, and then 3, 4, 2, 3, and 4 are mostly conversation, um, uh, mostly just long conversations, not a lot of action. So I thought people lose interest, but no, I released chapter 2, and it became even more viral than the first one. So when I got to chapter 3, I thought, okay, I'm probably going to have to continue on after 4. So I thought, okay, I'll do up to 10, and then people will lose interest. And then, of course, by the end of 10, I thought, no, they're not losing interest. They want more. And the pandemic was in full force at that point. So I was working on it during lockdown, and it was nice to have something like this that I could work on when you couldn't go anywhere. So I just wrote the script for the rest of the book. And finally, just before Christmas last year, I reached chapter 32, which is the very end of the book.
Oh my God.
Um,
And now you've put it together into a film.
yeah, so halfway through, I put together chapter 1 to 16 as a movie edit. And that really took off. That's the most popular incarnation
Oh wow.
of it. It's the other
That was
day
a couple of years ago, yeah. That one
yeah.
was, yeah.
I released it just before Christmas 22.
2, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so it crossed 1.5 million views a few days ago.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so I thought, okay, when I finish the second half, I'm going to do the same thing. So there's a part 2 movie as well.
Uh-huh.
It hasn't quite reached 1.5 million views just yet. It's got a way to catch up,
Uh-huh.
but it's still proving quite popular. Visually, it looks a lot better because at that point I switched over to NVIDIA Omnibus for rendering. So when you finish part 1 and you go straight into part 2, it suddenly looks a lot different. Um, so yeah, that's 4 hours worth of movies or episodes if you want to watch them individually.
That's amazing. That's a one hell of a creative endeavor, I think. I guess though, having done, I mean, because that I know you've lived and breathed that for years. I mean, what's that? 6 years.
Yeah. Although
What do you? Well, go
I will
on.
say there was a huge gap between episode 1 and 2 because of that time
Yeah.
I've spent thinking I'm not going to do it, and then figuring out if I could do it and finding the people. So most of the episodes had about a month between, on average.
Yeah.
Um, but there's that long gap of about 9 months between them because that's how long it took me to figure out doing it all.
Brilliant.
Um, yeah.
And then how many awards have you had for this series?
Uh, 10, it's so I submitted it to 10 film festivals that
Hmm.
it's been accepted at. So some of it's just been screened at or listed as was it what's the phrase?
A pick, just a
It's just picked. But yeah,
yeah,
selected, that's it.
yeah. Hmm.
And a few of them it's actually won awards at too, like uh best voice cast, which I was very pleased about. And um I was very happy to share that one with my cast 'cause I think they did such a great job, bringing these characters to life because without these people I couldn't have done it. Um I know AI voice generation is an option. It wasn't when I started this.
No, that's right. Yeah. Hmm.
Um, and I'm really happy to say that I used the same cast all the way through, and look forward to continue to work with them. Some of the people I've
That's
worked with before, like Ricky and Phil,
yeah.
and then this guy Matt. I met him through this. I haven't met him in person. He lives in America. Don't know if I will ever meet him. But it's still nice to have this guy that is really talented, and I hope he goes far with voice acting. I know that he's done. People have making mods for Star Wars games have gone to him to get him to do the famous characters in their mods as well. So he's done some Obi-Wan in the Jedi Knight games and stuff like that. So that's exciting. He'll share those with me, and so you can play as me now and stuff like that. So um,
Fantastic.
yeah, and there's still some more to come, which I don't know what the results are going to be yet. So
You've got it in other festivals, you say.
yeah,
And what's the one that you got just before Christmas? Was that a Star Warsy one?
it was the well the festival hasn't actually taken place yet, but I was able to announce that it was selected and up for best animation at the Los Angeles Fan Film Festival.
Oh,
This was,
congratulations.
thank you. This was going to be a live event. Understandably, they moved it
Yes.
online after the recent fires,
Mm.
um, which is a bit of a relief because now I can actually attend it.
Oh, you mean you weren't going to go to Los Angeles?
Well, it's a long way to go for one evening.
Yeah.
Although it would have been nice to, if I had one, to get up on the stage and done the thank everyone for it. But this is makes it a little bit cheaper to attend. So
Sure. But you could
yeah,
have met Ricky as well and had a beer and all the rest of it.
that's true. But I'll settle for the online one, and that does mean that other people can watch it as well. So
Oh, well, best of luck with that. I hope
thank
it
you.
finishes in the top. I'm sure it will, actually. I'm sure
I
it
hope so.
will.
Thank you.
Well, okay, so given this was such a massive endeavor, what are you going to do next?
But the immediate thing I'm doing is those early chapters don't visually look as good as the most recent ones because I was using iClone 6 when I got started. I think it was 6. Then moved to 7. No, it was an early version of 7, and then they had a big overhaul of the characters when I got to chapter 3. So suddenly the characters look different then. And then, of course, in iClone 8 came out halfway through, which I was then able to move into exporting into Omnibus. So what I'm doing at the moment is re-rendering everything. So I can do a special edition and release an episode every week once I've got enough finished. While I read the second book and write the script for that, because Heir to the Empire is only book one of a trilogy.
Oh,
Thankfully, it's a bit shorter than Heir to the Empire, but not by much.
so we've got another few years to go yet then on
Yeah,
Star Wars from you.
yeah. And I'd like to do some original stuff as well if I can squeeze that in. But um, even the Star Wars stuff is very popular, I'm quite happy to continue making it. And I do have a lot of fun with it. So
Yeah, and you go to a lot of cons as well, don't you? Because I know you're big into that sort of scene.
yeah, I actually cosplayed as one of the characters I voiced in it. I went to a Star Wars convention in August, and strangely enough, the only person who knew who I was dressed as, because he's in a book, he's not actually in any of the animated or film or live action stuff. Um, the only person that recognized who I was one of the actors in the one of the guest celebrity guests because she said she read all the books before she got cast in Ahsoka because she wanted to understand Grand Admiral Thrawn,
Uh-huh.
knowing that her character was working for him. She wanted to know why her character would be so impressive. So she read everything that he was in. So she recognized me as the character.
Incredible.
But none of the fans knew who I was, which I thought was really funny.
But they do now. If they've watched, if they've seen your series, then they're going to know who it is, aren't they?
Yeah,
Brilliant.
but that was fun.
Yeah, great. So when are we going to see the re-renderings?
I don't know yet because I'm still in the process of doing it. Um, I I've got let me check my thing. I've got nearly 5 episodes completed, but they're not in order.
Okay.
And what I really want to do is have enough of them completed so I can start releasing them, and then it doesn't matter about the last few because I can um, finish them off as people are watching. Because it's going to take 32 weeks if I release them weekly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I had all the files set up for the last one, I did render that one again first in a higher resolution. So I've got the very end of the book rendered as a special edition, but I sort of going to be the last one I actually release.
Yeah. I imagine going back 6 years is going to be a tough one to do and retrieve.
Actually, it's not so bad. For the most part, all of the project files still work. And where I've updated the character models, all I have to do is drag them off from the I got Icon as a thing where all your content is there. So just drag the character, drag it over to the display onto the one you want to replace. It will do its thing and swap the character model. All the animation is transferred over automatically.
Oh, okay.
So most of the time it takes about half an hour to do the transferring and updating, and then I'll export it over to Omnibus and then have to change the lighting because the ray trace lighting works differently from iClone's lighting. That again, that's included in that half an hour I was talking about. It doesn't take long to change the lighting. Gets a little bit trickier with the action scenes because iClone's explosions and special effects don't transfer over to Omnibus at all. So I have to redo the effects, and I have to redo them so that the time with the sounds, so I don't have to redo all the sound editing.
Yeah.
Because it'd be nice to not have to do that as well. But it's not that many shots that require that. So I can't say exactly yet when it's going to be finished because I don't know yet. I'm too early into it.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds a bit of a faff, to be honest.
It's not too bad, but when I can leave it rendering, I leave it rendering overnight. So, or if I go out and do something, or just
Read
not
another
available
book.
at the computer. Yeah, read
Write another script.
Yeah, I can do all of that stuff where it's rendering. I know when I'd like to release it, but I'm not going to say just yet because it really does depend on how long it takes to get to it because the rendering times are still pretty long. Though weirdly, I found that. So one of the things I'm not just rendering at the original resolution, I'm rendering it higher. It's not 4K because I don't have a screen big enough to test that on, but
Right.
higher than it was. I accidentally rendered a scene at 1080p, and I thought, no, it needs to be higher than this. It's 1440p, 1440p. I don't know how they say it. That's the resolution I'm going for. So when I rendered it again at the high resolution, it was faster than when I rendered it at 1080p, and I do not know why, because all it is high resolution. You'd think it would take longer.
Hmm.
And I've noticed that I did some experiments with that, and I've noticed that.
I wonder
So
why.
I don't know why. I'm sure if I rendered it at 4K, it wouldn't be really fast. And maybe I should try that as well at some point, though, just to
Or
see.
you could go the whole hog and go 8K.
I had someone ask me for that.
Yeah, you will, won't you? When you're finished, doesn't matter how good the quality is that you render it out on, there's always going to be somebody say, no, it needs to be better. I need it on this.
16K.
Yeah, why not?
I don't think YouTube
140.
even supports that.
Yeah. Oh, well, it sounds like you're still going strong with it, though. That's the amazing thing.
Yeah,
And I guess you're going to have to put it in more film festivals then as the higher res version of it, yeah?
I guess I will. The whole 4 hour version is one long supercut.
Yeah, yeah. And then of course, we've had all the interest in Heir to the Empire from the Martin family.
Yeah.
What's going to happen with that, do you think?
Um, I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to seeing what they do actually, because I can only think that that will ultimately generate more interest in what you've done with yours.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. Well, not that it's not succeeded amazingly well, because I think, for it to have reached the audience that it has is no mean feat, and it's continued to do that over an extended period of time, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Great stuff. All right. Well, I haven't got any more questions. I just wanted to ask you what you were doing next.
Oh, what's it? Well, I will say that I looked at one of the in chapter 2. One of the scenes I was originally very proud of was the balcony, and it's got Princess Leia looking out over the city, and you've got the wind is blowing her gown slightly because these are high buildings, so there's going to be a breeze up there.
Hmm.
And you just kind of look at there, that's blowing, and her hair's blowing a little bit, and you got the city and all the lights in the background. I was really proud of that scene when I first did it, but obviously it looks really dated now because I was using that such an old version of iClone. And I can say that looking at the new one, which I have rendered now, I'm again really proud of that scene because it looks so
Good
good.
for you.
But I can do other things like the floor that she's standing on, because it's ray traced. I made it slightly shiny, so you got her reflection like marble in it. So you can see her standing there, and you got her shadow, but also her reflection in the marble floor.
Oh,
And so
wow.
when her dress is blowing, you got the reflection of it there, and you got traffic in the background, which wasn't really that visible before. Again, I can't wait to show you that off. So when it's time to show off these um, new renders, that's going to be one of the first shots. Is here's the original, and then here's the new one.
Yeah. Great. So you're going to do a comparative evaluation and when you
Yeah.
present it, that's going to be lovely.
I think the trailer will be something like that. You've seen it like this, but now and do a sort of wipe across.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a bit like Blade Runner, isn't it? The first and the latest version of it.
Well, with Blade Runner, there's 5 different versions of it that are available. Apparently, there's a 6th one which is not available,
Oh,
and probably won't ever be, but it's one that fans really want.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't think I'll go that far with it, but
Awesome. Well, it's lovely to chat to you about that. And what inspired me to ask you about it was your message from the director, end of the book video. So I'll
oh,
put a link in the show notes to that,
yeah.
and to your channel for your whole film, first and second
Oh, thank
sections of
you.
it.
Yeah, those messages from the director videos were a
Yeah,
good way to talk to the community,
absolutely.
to give them updates on what was happening with the project. So,
It's lovely. I like it.
yeah. All right. Well, I think we've covered the news and we've discussed Heir to the Empire a little bit there. So I think we'll wrap things up. It's nice that you're back from Mars now.
Yeah, Zagreb.
Yeah. And we'll be back next week with my pick, which,
Is it your pick? Yes, it is.
yeah,
Yes.
Elite Dangerous, which I'm
Oh,
really excited because it's a little bit different, the way I've done things. So,
look forward
yeah,
to seeing that.
thank you. Again, if you have any comments about any of the news or Heir to the Empire or the show in general, please send us an email at talk@completethemachinima.com. And you can read our blog at completethemachinima.com. And we'll see you again next week. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.